Amidst the damp, gray cobblestones of Paris, where the scent of fresh bread and bitter coffee mingle, and the Eiffel Tower casts its proud shadow over the city like a guardian, countless stories unfold. Stories of love, art, wealth, and, of course, despair. Our story is about a man named Julien who was lost in the clamor of this beautiful city. For years, Julien's life had been reduced to a repetitive and merciless cycle. Every day, he would huddle in a corner of the sidewalk near the Pont Neuf bridge. He no longer looked at people's faces. He only extended his hand toward the shadows that passed him by, hoping for a few worthless coins. The money he managed to collect was so meager it could only afford a piece of dry bread or a bowl of thin soup, just enough to silence the killing hunger of that day and keep him alive to repeat the same tomorrow. His face, which once held youth and dreams, was now hidden beneath a layer of grime and indifference. He was a faint, forgotten presence in the endless bustle of Paris. One autumn afternoon, a cold wind danced with the yellow and orange leaves scattered on the ground. Julien was curled up, shivering from the cold. Hunger clenched his insides like an icy fist. At that moment, he heard the sound of firm, steady footsteps. Without lifting his head, he saw the shadow of a pair of shiny, expensive leather shoes stop in front of him. This was the chance he had been waiting for. With a voice that barely escaped his throat, he whispered, "Sir, can you help? For a bite of bread." He stretched his trembling hand toward the man. The man, dressed in a dark, well-tailored suit and smelling of expensive cologne, paused for a moment. Julien expected a few paltry coins or perhaps a crumpled banknote, but the man did not bend down. He did not take out any money. He simply spoke in a calm, deep voice, devoid of any pity, but filled with a kind of cold seriousness. "My friend, I will not give you money, because today's money will only make you hungrier for tomorrow." Julien slowly raised his head and stared into the man's eyes. They were not condescending, but curious. The man continued, "An outstretched hand remains just an outstretched hand, but a hand that has something to offer draws the world to itself. Instead of asking, find something to give, even if it's the smallest thing." And then, without another word, he continued on his way and disappeared into the crowd. The man's words created ripples in Julien's mind, like a stone thrown into a stagnant pond. He couldn't beg anymore that day. His hand felt heavy. Every time he tried to extend it, the man's voice echoed in his ears. A hand that has something to offer. What did he have to offer? He had nothing. Only worn-out clothes, a tired body, and a broken spirit. That night, he fell asleep hungrier than ever, but his mind was awake, replaying the wealthy man's words over and over. The next day, and the day after, were the same. Julien no longer begged, but he was still homeless and hungry. He just sat in a corner and watched the people. The city's dynamism, the rush of the crowd, the exchange of money and goods. For the first time in years, he was truly seeing. One afternoon, as he sat in the corner of a small square, staring at the hustle and bustle of life, his eyes fell upon a young woman, a girl with a beautiful, innocent face and long golden hair that shone in the sunlight. She held a wicker basket, trying to sell homemade sandwiches to passers-by. Fresh sandwiches, baguette with ham and cheese. Julien watched her. He saw how eagerly she approached people and how most of them walked past her with indifference. He saw how the smile on the girl's lips faded with every "no thank you." In her face, Julien saw his own familiar despair. But there was one big difference. That girl, for all her exhaustion, had something to offer. Her hand was not outstretched to take, but to give. As he looked at the girl, A spark suddenly ignited in the depths of his mind. A distant memory, like the smell of food from a childhood home. He remembered his grandmother's small kitchen in a village in the south of France. He remembered the large copper cauldron that was always bubbling on the stove, its magical aroma filling the entire house. He remembered how much he used to love cooking. Something to offer. The wealthy man's voice resonated in his mind again. Now the sentence had a new meaning. He had something, a forgotten talent, an old love. His heart began to pound. For the first time in years, a feeling akin to hope flowed through his veins. He knew what he had to do, but he had no money to start. The next day, he went to a flea market. His eyes landed on an old, rusty handcart. The shop owner was a grumpy old man. Julien told him, "I have no money, but I need this cart. I'm willing to work for you to earn it." The old man glanced at him impatiently and said, "Move boxes for a week, clean the warehouse, do whatever I say, and then this piece of junk is yours." Julien accepted. For 1 week, from dawn till dusk, he did the hardest jobs. His body ached with exhaustion, but his spirit was more determined than ever. He not only did what the old man told him to, but he also meticulously organized his cluttered warehouse and cleaned the rusted tools. At the end of the week, when the old man came to inspect his work, he was amazed to see the order and effort Julien had put in. His grumpy face softened for a moment. He walked over to Julien and said, "I told you the cart was yours. But you've worked for more than this piece of junk is worth." He then reached into his pocket, pulled out a few banknotes, and placed them in Julien's hand. "Here's your wage. Now go and start whatever it is you want to do." Julien couldn't believe it. He had not only gotten the cart, but he now had a small starting capital to buy ingredients. With a deep thank you to the old man, he pushed the chariot of his dreams toward his new destiny. He went straight to the market and, with that money, bought a small cauldron, some meat, onions, carrots, potatoes, and simple spices. He decided to cook the same meat and vegetable stew his grandmother used to make. A simple dish, but rich with love and memory. The next day, Julien set up his cleaned cart in the same square where he had seen the golden-haired girl. He lit a small fire under his cauldron and began to cook. Gradually, the delightful aroma of the stew filled the air, a warm, homemade, and tempting scent that was different from the formal perfumes of Parisian cafes. People looked on with curiosity, but no one approached. Julien did not get discouraged. He was cooking with all his soul. After an hour, a construction worker passing by paused and asked, "What's this, my friend?" "It smells good," Julien, with a smile that hadn't graced his lips in years, said, "My grandmother's special stew." A taste of home. The worker became his first customer. With trembling hands, Julien filled a bowl and gave it to him. The man took the first spoonful, and his eyes widened in surprise. "Wow, this is incredible. It's like my mother made this." That day, Julien sold only 3 bowls. But to him, those 3 bowls were worth all the wealth in Paris. He was no longer a beggar. He was a cook. In the following days, his customers grew. The fame of the man with the cauldron spread through the neighborhood. People started calling him Julien. He had reclaimed his identity. One busy afternoon, as Julien was quickly serving the customers who had lined up, his eyes fell on a familiar face. It was the same golden-haired girl. She was standing in a corner with a plastic bag in her hand containing a few unsold sandwiches and a look of longing and fatigue directed at Julien's long queue. Julien's heart ached. He knew that feeling all too well. He paused his work for a moment and called out to the girl, "Mademoiselle." The girl turned to him in surprise. Julien, with a warm smile, said, "I need some help. I can't handle all these customers alone. Would you do me the honor of coming to help me tomorrow? I'll pay you a salary." The girl's eyes, whose name was Sophie, filled with tears. She nodded in acceptance. From the next day on, Sophie worked alongside Julien. They became an incredible team. Between work, they talked, laughed, and shared their dreams with each other. They became not only business partners, but also the best of friends. Months and years passed. Their small cart transformed into a small, warm restaurant in one of Paris's cobbled alleyways. They named it Julien's Cauldron, Le Chaudron de Julien. Their restaurant quickly became one of the most beloved spots in the city. Julien, the man who once looked to the generosity of others to fill his stomach, was now a respected chef and a successful entrepreneur. One evening, on the first anniversary of the restaurant's opening, Julien invited all their loyal customers and friends. The restaurant was filled with the happy buzz of laughter. In the middle of the celebration, Julien stood on a chair and asked everyone for silence. His heart was pounding fiercely. He fixed his gaze on Sophie, who was watching him with a beautiful smile. Julien began to speak, his voice trembling with emotion. "Dear friends, many of you know my story. You know where I came from. I was once a man who searched for help on the streets until someone reminded me that the most important thing is to have something to offer." He paused and continued. "I thought that something was just my grandmother's stew recipe. But I was wrong. The greatest and best thing I found in this world to offer was my heart. And I gave it to someone who believed in me, someone who stood by my side and built this dream with me." Julien stepped down from the chair, walked over to Sophie, and in front of everyone's astonished eyes, knelt down. He took a small box out of his pocket. "Sophie, you weren't just my business partner. You were my hope. You were my reason to fight. You are the heart of this restaurant and the heart of my life. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Sophie's face. The entire restaurant had fallen silent. Sophie, in a trembling but joyful voice, cried out, "Yes, yes, Julien, 1,000 times, yes." The sound of applause and cheers filled the air. Julien and Sophie, in the middle of their dream restaurant, embraced each other. The story of a man who had gone from nothing to everything was made complete with love. And so it was that, in the heart of Paris, a simple cauldron of stew not only filled hungry stomachs, but also cooked up dreams, revived hope, and bound two hearts together forever. Julien's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest wealth is not in our pockets, but in our hands, provided we know what we have to offer with them. Julien's story shows us how a spark, an idea, or even a forgotten talent can change our entire destiny. Each one of us has a cauldron of hope within us, waiting for the flame beneath it to be lit. Now it's your turn. Tell us in the comments section. What is that hidden talent or passion of yours that you'd love to offer to the world one day? Let's get inspired by each other's stories. If this story managed to touch your heart, even for a moment, please help us light the flame of hope in more people's hearts by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next story.